on to the talk now. So a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today is different types of networks. So ranging from LAN, WAN, MAN, all of the different ANs. Then type of network environments. So you have corporate environments, you have home environments, you have personal environments that are a bit different than what you would normally see in a network. Then from that, we're going to be explaining what the internal versus external networks are, whether you're doing an internal exploitation or you're doing external exploitation. And then another thing in that is enumeration, what you can see, what you can gather from being inside of the network, and some tools to help with that. Then lastly, a little bit more of an advanced technique for people that want a more advanced side of this is attack routing. So if you're inside of a network from externally and you want to route attacks, or you want to start routing your information from a machine that you've already popped, or some computer that you popped inside of an internal network that you want to route your traffic through. I'll be giving a demo, a little bit of that, and demoing some of the techniques to exploit something externally and get into an internal network. So yeah, so some types of networks. This is really basic as far as the descriptions I gave go, because although it is good to know more about things of this nature, you don't necessarily need to know like the nitty-gritty of it just to get started. So a LAN is just a local area network. That's what it stands for, and is typically just your home network or your corporate network or machines that are in a very small space. And small being relative, as in a corporate office or a campus is considered a LAN because that is in a small region or area. Whereas a WAN is more open. It is your wide area network. It is what most people consider their internet because it's their connection to their internet service provider. And then you have a metropolitan area network. I put this up here because a lot of people don't talk about it when they're giving these kind of talks, and it's kind of good to touch on that if you're doing some kind of high-level attacking or you're trying to break into the infrastructure of a city, you need to know this because this is what connects all the computers in a city together to a couple of different data centers. We won't really be touching much more on this. I just wanted to put that out there. Does anyone have any questions on like the basics of just different types of networks? No? Okay. Cool. Tell me if I'm going too fast, by the way. I'm going too fast? Oh. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I will continue. So then different type of corporate environments. So the main, or different type of network environments really. The main kind of environments that you will see when you're given a penetration test or you're trying to do network exploitation is a corporate environment. Now this consists usually of a domain controller or a controller of some type for an administrator to manage the different tools. And then there is servers or services that company uses. So it might be a database, it might be a web server. Usually it's all connected back to the domain controller. And then you have users. And so users are typically people or just general people on the network. Those are running usually Windows boxes, sometimes Mac. Very little to none will you see Linux running on as a user on a corporate network. And if you do, it might be a little bit suspicious. So again, most of the time when you're trying to break into a network, you're usually trying to break into a corporate network. Now, a different environment that you might see or encounter when breaking into a corporate network is you might have phished someone and you gotten into someone's computer and you got into their personal network or their home network, but then they're a VPN user, meaning that they tunnel their traffic into their corporate network, which basically means that instead of being at site, they're using a VPN to get to on-site. So attack routing and attack pivoting, which is the later concepts we're going to cover, are going to help get you from the home network to internally, or they're going to be able to get from the corporate network from a basic user box and kind of pivot around machines. So that's just like the basics of the difference between a corporate and home network. Does anyone have any questions about the differences and why it's significant to know the differences? No? Okay, I will move on. So So now this is the beefy slide. I'll slow down for this because it can be very confusing. So we have a local area network that's considered your internal network that usually has some kind of IP address that is different from your WAN. And because of that, you might not have access to that network externally. A lot of the times you'll have firewalls or IDSs in place to prevent people from getting into the LAN. But those machines have to get out to the internet somehow, or else they wouldn't really be doing a job. Some machines don't access the internet at all, and that's their specific job, is to do one task that doesn't necessarily need the internet or need a wide area network to access. But for the most part, users in that corporate network, or a user in general, or maybe a service like a website, will have access to a wide area network, and that is what you kind of want to target. You want to try to break in to the wide area network so that you can pivot inside of the internal network, because you won't necessarily, as I said, ever have access to the internal network, or you shouldn't be able to if it's set up properly. And so in order to exploit an external network, you need to know a couple of things about an external network. You need to know the target IP address, or the location in which you're exploiting. Now, this might not be very easy to find for some clients because they won't have any web portals or anything that is outward facing. But most of the time, they're hosting their website, or they're hosting some kind of user interface online that you can find an IP address and you can get the IP for. And what you want to do from that is you want to scan anything you can from that. And that's where enumeration comes in. You want to be able to scan the network to find open ports and services that might be vulnerable. And that's where that kind of goal comes into mind, is where are you in the network, and what part of the network are you where are you a part of the network, and what is the goal? Is your goal to get to a database server? Is your goal to get to a server that is off the internet? Is your goal to just pop the external box and not necessarily go inside anymore? Is your goal to be just kind of controlling the entire network, eventually going slow and low and popping slowly up and up the lateral chain of boxes? And so enumeration really helps with that. So for external enumeration, you want to have you want to look for open ports, any running services, including RDP, a VPN client that a user is using, or that is a VPN server on the network that you're on, or a RPC client, or VNC or SSH. Any of these clients or any of these services would allow you to get into the internal network from an external box, because these are out-facing networks. These are out-facing services that you can get into the network. It might be confusing. Like, whenever I first learned about this, it was a bit confusing. Does anyone have any questions about this, or anything that you want to, for me to specify more, go into more detail? No? Okay, I will continue. No, I will not hack your money or hack your enemies for money. Someone asked that. But anyways, so going along the list is that once you see the services that are open, there might not be any services that are necessarily open that are easily exploitable. There might be a web portal open or a website open, and the website, kind of breaking into a website, is a whole nother deal of exploitation that I think Nick or Jake will go over in another presentation that we're going to give. That's like an entirely new realm. Right now we're just going to be talking about breaking into the network from an external perspective. So once you exploit some of these, you want to try to see what you have access to and what the IP range is that you have. What are some of the overall information that you can gather. And then once you are in an internal network, you want to see what more information you can gather, what users are on the network, and what exploitable services and hosts are on internally in the network. Now, that is also where attack routing comes in, because if you are externally facing and then these internal machines have a firewall, you can easily bypass that firewall by just routing your traffic through a machine that's inside the network. Because for the most part, if it's not necessarily a huge corporate network or someone that has experience in security, or even they are experienced in security, they might not be tracking what traffic is going on in between clients, Rather, they're tracking what information is being sent outside of clients and what information is being sent away from their network. So it's really easy to kind of bypass that firewall and those filters by attacking from inside of the network. And so because you're inside of the network and you can pivot this way, it's a lot easier to gather information and to go higher up in the network chain. And instead of being a user, get administrator, and then slowly from administrator, local administrator, get domain admin, which is sometimes the goal of a penetration test is just to get a domain admin account. So you ask, well, what?
Did you have a quick question?
You have a quick question?
So, like, if you're hacking into the corporate network, is it ever a goal to like lock out the other IT people? Is that ever a thing to go after the people that know security, like to lock them out of the system? Is that ever?
So if you're trying to go for a very quick attack where timing is everything, then I guess that would be a goal. But for the most part, in networks, you don't necessarily want to try and lock out anyone. You don't wanna like attack someone to where they figure it out. Nick, you want to say something?
It's like, have you ever played Payday 2? It's like, you can go out if you want, but then the cops are going to come, so you better be real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a question?
I think like at the end of the day, whoever has physical access to the server is ultimately not going to be locked out, though.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, you can lock their accounts out, sure. You're going to annoy them, and they're going to find out you're there. But, like, at most, you'll have 30 minutes to an hour. And that's being very, like, liberal with that number. So it's beneficial for you, the attacker, to kind of stay slow and low and, like, don't really set off any alarms and just kind of weigh it out, live off the land, as they say.
So, like, let's say you're trying to get information. How long does it take a hacker normally to get the information he needs to send back his way?
So that's part of like C2 methods, like getting information out of the network.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of different methods that you can put. And actually, I should have made a slide about exfiltration of data. But basically, there are a ton of different methods to getting data out of a network. And what you want to look for is the method that you can disguise as normal traffic as possible. So you don't want to necessarily open port 1337, the LEAP port, for all of your traffic to just going to a rogue IP. Because if anyone sees that, they're going to be like, why is all of my information being sent to this random Chinese IP address in the middle of nowhere? Like, you want to try to disguise your traffic as normal network traffic. So if you see that they have a web server, try to but use an open port 80 or 443 to send your traffic through that way. There's a lot of different C2 methods. There's a C2 server called Trevor C2 actually that sends its traffic through a web page. So instead of you sending an interpreter session, you're actually just downloading and uploading information to a website that the attacker can see.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
So that way they can't track the IP address because it's going to this website?
Yeah, so they can track the website that it's going to, but because it's a website, it doesn't look as malicious. And there's like some more things you can do with domain fronting and web cache poisoning to make it so that you have a distributed kind of network of information that gets sent out to.
And I hate to keep bringing you off topic, but I
It's
keep
okay.
saying web cache poisoning. Can you explain what web cache poisoning is? Because I don't understand it.
Yeah, so web cache poisoning is basically whenever this might be a very rough explanation, and Nick can give a better one whenever I'm
We can
done.
talk about that when we do web as well more in depth.
Yeah, well, so we'll talk more in depth when we do web exploitation. But web cache poisoning is basically where there is a web cache that you want to save your information to, or there's a cache server that most people go to whenever they're visiting a website. Cloudflare does this, for example, and a lot of different cloud services do caching of your website. So there are caches on different points and servers around the world so that a user can access the closest cache to itself. Now, this cache has to update itself because if it's a dynamic page, then there's no way for it to just statically stay the same and download from a central server. So a lot of the times, which is a bad idea, is that they cache from instances of the user sending in information. So you can kind of scrub the information the user sends it, and you can inject code into the information that you send the server, infecting the cached server. and so then you have control over that cache server. And now anyone that accesses that cache is going to be infected with your code because you infected that individual cache. And typically speaking, caches have a little less security than a web server would, because it's just copies of itself. So they figured that they wouldn't necessarily need to have as much security. And up until recently, it was a very hard thing to learn, is because not a lot of people understood how web caches worked. So web cache poisoning was kind of a iffy topic. But if you want to learn more about web caching, Black Hat gave a talk in 2018, and it's on YouTube. And the guy who built tools and does a ton of stuff with web cache poisoning gave a presentation. He works at Portswigger, which is the company that Burp Suite, or the company that built Burp Suite. Does that do you understand?
No, thank you so much. That really helped.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions? That was a great question. No? Okay. I will move on. I will not play Payday 2 to demonstrate how that works for you. So, back to Nmap. So there are a couple tools that you can use to kind of enumerate a network and kind of see what's inside and outside of a network and what ports there are. Nmap is a great tool for that. It stands for Network Map, and the way it is used is similar to the way most Linux commands are used. And it sends packets out to ports and different parts of the network for it to receive a response. And depending on what the response is, it will show information based off that. So here's a basic Nmap line or command. What this does is SC stands for common scripts. That basically just runs the server against common scripts that could possibly be on the server. It helps you enumerate a little bit more information about a service once you find it. TAC SV stands for service and version. So these are going to give you not only the service that's running, so if a website's running, if RPC is running, if RDP is running, any of those things, it's also going to give you a version number. And sometimes the version number is accurate, like it is 100% accurate. Sometimes it'll say that this is fingerprinted towards a certain service, and we can't really know for sure. So it'll give you a percentage of how much it's fingerprinted for that service. So, and then TAC O capital A is output all, and output all basically just means it'll output it to 3 different formats: greppable Nmap, Nmap, and an XML format. That's just more for if you want to save the file and look at it before, because you do not want to run Nmap continuously every time you forget what you Nmap scanned, because it's kind of redundant once you have the information, and you never want to do same thing twice unless something has changed. So if you Nmap something and it's 3 months later, yeah, Nmap again, because services can change, ports can open, ports can close, a lot can change in 3 months. But if you Nmapped in the morning and then forgot what you said at night, and then you go at night and you Nmap again, then I don't think a lot's going to change between morning and night. But that's from my experience. So then there's another service called Nessus. And Nessus is basically just a vulnerability and exploitation scanning tool. Nessus allows you to scan a network that you think has a vulnerability, and scans for different types of vulnerabilities. There are a lot of things that you can do in Nessus. You can even give it a password that you might have and check for that password and try to log into the machine with that password. And it's generally a great tool. The problem with Nessus, though, is very heavy and very loud. And there are throttling settings you can give Nessus, which would allow you to kind of slow down the network traffic and slow down the amount of scanning that it's doing. But again, it is still really fingerprinted and really loud. So any kind of IDS or IPS is going to be able to catch it eventually. So Nessus is kind of a last resort / I'm going loud and proud, like that one guy that was scanning the CSG website. That's kind of what it is. But Nmap is a great tool for that. Nmap has a lot of options, and I highly recommend reading the man page. I said this during my live hacking session. The man page is a lot of pages. So reading it is very beneficial, though, because if you want to scan for specific ports, if you want to have a specific timing because you know that ports will be open during a certain time of day, or you know that the IDS has a certain rule in place, and you want to be able to slow it down or speed it up based off that, that is why you should read the Nmap man page. It's a very it's a very big security tool that a lot of people use. And if you want a job in security, a lot of people like will ask you, do you know Nmap, and like how do you use it?
So
Yeah.
keep asking, but like, can you get in trouble for running Nmap?
Can you what?
Can you get in trouble running Nmap?
No, actually you can't. So Nmap is not illegal inherently, but if you went around knocking on everyone's door, checking and like checking to see if the door is unlocked in your neighbor, then people are gonna start being suspicious, and it's not a good thing to have. So it's kind of like that situation.
But like, if you're at your house in your neighborhood and you Nmap, you can get in trouble.
You might get a very angry email from people, but there's no legal pursuit because Nmap isn't exploiting anything. You're just looking at information that is already out there.
More than likely, you're just going to get your IP blocked.
Yeah. That's actually that's the most realistic situation.
On UTD, well, if you do it on your own network, you might get an email from your host master saying, "Hey, quit it."
Yeah, on UTD they'll lock you out of the network sometimes if you're an Nmap on it.
Yeah,
Those ones.
I did it. I did it. I just blocked you.
Yeah. How many? Someone asked the question. How many websites have I low orbit ion cannoned? 0. Because if you know how that actually works, you'll end up just blasting your own router than actually doing anything. So I recommend the person who said that you run low orbit ion cannon and see what happens to your router. So yeah.
Also a big arresting flag if you actually hit someone with it.
Oh yeah, so like if you DDoSing is illegal. Like if you do that, you will be arrested. And unless like I don't know very many people that have DDoSed from their home IP that haven't been caught and haven't been arrested. So don't do that. Or do it and go to jail. Like that's just kind of like the consequence. But anyways, but I don't recommend doing it. So this is the kind of the next topic, which is a little bit more advanced. So bear with me here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. So routing attacks is simply where you take the attack that you want to have and the information that you want to send, and you send it through a machine that is on the internal network. And you can do this a couple of different ways. You can do this simply by SSHing into the server and setting up a route that way. You can use proxies, so you can proxy tunnel your information through the machine. You can set up a reverse connection so that all the traffic goes back from that machine to your machine. There's a lot of different methods. And today I'm going to be showing the proxying method. So I'm basically going to be setting up a proxy server on the machine that I break into, and sending out the information that way. Now, the reason that you'd want to do this is because a lot of the times machines that are like secure or like bunkered down and they don't have access to the internet. They don't have access to a lot of things that normal machines would have access to. So you need to be able to pivot from a machine that you don't have a lot of information from to get to that machine. So a lot of the times you'll pop a user machine like Xavier's laptop, and he's working at a company, and I break in his computer because he clicked on my phishing scheme. And so I have access to his computer, and I need to get access to the domain controller. And now the domain controller, the security guy locked it down extremely, and there's no possible way for me to break into that machine from an external source. But Xavier has access to that machine. So what I do is I route my traffic through his machine, and now I have access to that machine. I can Nmap normally, I can see what information I can get from that, I can scan, I can do all my enumeration, and I can try to break into that machine. Does that make sense? Does everyone understand how attack routing works? Okay, cool. I'm gonna do the demo now, and someone asked, how much dedicated RAM do I need for my Minecraft server? I don't know, nor do I care.
32 gigs.
Although, give me the IP to your Minecraft server, like, if you do. I'd love to, like, play. So, I think that's all I have for the slides. I'm going to be going to here, and we're going to be doing a demo now. So, may the demo gods be with me when I do this, but there is this Windows machine, and it has access to 2 different networks. Can everyone read that, by the way? No? You can't? Okay, Joanne, I'll increase the size just for you. Scaling factor 150. Can you read that?
No.
Still not very
You can read it? Okay. It's not very, okay, you know what?
I mean, it's. I'll put on my glasses.
Well, there's your first problem. But don't worry, I wear contacts too. Or I wear contacts, not glasses. But anyways, so I want to break into this network, and if I open up my Kali box, don't worry about this, we'll get to this. If I open up a new window, can everyone see that? Can you? Okay, cool. So if I do IPA, we can see that this is an if config. Is that okay? This is better. We can see that my IP address at the very top is 192.168.57.4. So I'm on the .57 subnet, and this Windows machine has access to the .57 and the .56 subnet. I want to get on the .56 subnet because I don't have access to that. So if I ping 192.168.56.1.101, I can't reach it. That's just not going to happen. So what I want to do is but if I ping, actually I can't ping that because it has no ping on. But if I nmap the the 57.3 network, I should be able to see some information. And because I didn't want to make y'all wait here, I already nmapped it. So if we look at the top, can everyone read that? Do I need to increase the size? No? Okay, cool. So nmap, I typed in the same command that I showed earlier, and I got an output. So basically what this reads is that there is port 135 open, port 445, and port 49154. So does anyone know what this looks like? Hint that it is a Windows Server 2008. Does anyone know what semi-recent exploit came out that could pop this?
Eternal Blue.
There you go. Andrew. His name's Andrew. My name's Andrew. We're cool. So what's it called? So Eternal Blue I'll be able to exploit this. So what I can do now is load up MSF console. And remember that IP address. I mean, I have it over here, but yeah. Once Metasploit loads up, Metasploit is an exploitation framework. It has a ton of different modules that you can load and use to break into a network. It also has really cool jokes at the front of every time you try to access it. So you didn't say the magic word. Gosh dang it. But do I have any active? Okay, cool. I want to use Eternal Blue, so I can search eternal_blue, and it'll search for the module. I know the name of this module, but I just want to show you that if you've never used Metasploit before, it's really easy to just navigate using the search function. There's a lot of documentation on how to index the search too, so it's not as slow as it is right now. But I search Eternal Blue, and what that's going to pop up eventually is the list of things that have Eternal Blue, the name Eternal Blue in the module. So as we can see, there's an auxiliary scanner that allows me to scan for MSF for Eternal Blue. There is a exploit for Eternal Blue, and then there's an exploit for Eternal Blue Windows 8. If you don't know that, but there's different versions of Eternal Blue. Some of them are some of them got ported over to Windows 8. Not all of them work for Windows 8. There are even some that work for Windows 10, but again, it's been patched, so it's kind of hard to do that. And a lot of blue screening's been happening whenever people try to exploit Eternal Blue on Windows 10. So we want to use Eternal Blue for the 2008 server. So we use exploit Windows SMB MS MS17 Eternal Blue. And so here we can see all of the amazing options we have. The only ones that are required are the ones that say yes, and really the only one that's actually required is the port and the R port and the R host. And that just means the remote host and the remote port. And because we know that the port 445 based off our nmap, if I okay, well I cleared it, but based off our nmap, we know that port 445 is open. By the way, if I'm going too fast, let me know. I will slow down. Is everyone good? Cool. So we can see here that the exploitable targets that for this version of the module that we're using is for Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 R2, which is what this Windows machine is. So if I set the R host to 192.168.57.3, I can run it, but there's one small problem if I run it right now. Right now it's going to run and it's going to pop me a shell, but Metasploit, when you run and you pop me a shell, it pops me a shell. Like, I won't have any of the features that Metasploit gives with that. So I need to set a Metasploit payload or a Meterpreter payload. This will set up a Meterpreter session that connects back to me, and I can use all of the Meterpreter features. Really quick side note about Meterpreter: the communication method that it uses to call back and to send information to and from the host machine to the exploited machine is a very old protocol. It was last updated in 2008. So it's very much heuristically based and very much like known. So if you're doing anything with any kind of IDS, IPS, any kind of firewall, Meterpreter will be caught. So sometimes it is more beneficial to do everything manually. For in this case that I'm just demonstrating, I know that there aren't any firewalls or any IDSs in place here, so I'm just going to use Meterpreter. But if you're not, just get a shell on the machine and then set up the proxy yourself. It can be a lot more beneficial, and I recommend practicing that if you're doing that on your on a virtual machine. So we want to use payload, Windows as 64-bit. Can everyone read that? By the way, I'm like typing in this bottom corner. Cool. So we want to use the 64-bit, and we want to use Meterpreter and a reverse TCP shell. So now we see a bunch of new options popped up at the bottom here. L host means our local host, and L port means the port that it will connect back to, because reverse TCP shell means that that machine will connect back to me. I don't connect to that machine. I will connect to the machine when I do the exploit, but other than that, there won't be any connections going from me to it. It'll be from it to me. So I set the L host to 192.168.57.3, no, .4. And then I run. And Eternal Blue will do its magic. And what I'm doing right now, oh, I know why. Oopsie. And so Metasploit has very, very specific terminology. Use, when you type use, it means that you want to use that that command or that exploit or module by itself. When you set something, you're setting something within the module. So whenever I hit use payload, I was not using the I was using the payload by itself. I wasn't using the module and setting the payload within it. So I need to use the module. I can see that all my options saved. Now I set payload to Windows. Also, tab complete is really like slow. And so set lhost 192.168.57.4 options, and I can run. So now we are doing a network exploit. We're doing this is, I believe, a buffer overflow. Eternal Blue is a buffer overflow that is overflowing the SMB client on the machine and then because it's doing a buffer overflow, it runs code on that over the network, runs code on the machine, gives me back a session, and now I win and I have an interpreter session. Woohoo! But that's not all I wanted to do. I wanted to get on the client. I wanted to get on the other subnet because that's the whole point of attack pivoting and breaking into the internal network. I want to be able to pivot. So what I can do now is I can background, or really quickly, if you guys want to see a different exploit or a different way of pivoting. Once I'm internally in the network, it's super easy for me to now do psexec, which is allowing me to log in to the machine over the network. In order to do psexec, you need a username and password. I am system. Eternal Blue gives me administrator or system on this machine. So if I do hash dump, which dumps all the hashes on the machine, I can see all of the hashes in clear text. They are hashed, but there's a way around this. NTLM v2 allows me to do pass the hash, which means that I can take the hash and I don't need to crack it, and I can just send it to the next client. I don't have the Google Slides open anymore. For some reason it closed. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Like, just raise your hand.
Okay, so I actually saw one legitimate question on there, so I'll just go ahead, like, you got a second, I'll just address it.
Yeah.
So somebody asked, like, if your IP gets blocked, can you change it? And the answer is yes, but not in the way that it immediately sounds like. It's not as simple as, say, changing your MAC address, which is just, you're gonna tell your router, like, a different, like, I'm actually this MAC address, and it just believes it because that's just how it has to work at that layer of networking. It's a little bit different for IP addresses and quote-unquote spoofing IP addresses. It's not so much that you're saying that you're somebody else and somebody's believing you. That doesn't exactly work because at that layer of networking, essentially the person on the other side is going to know what part of the internet that request came from. So it's more like the way you quote-unquote change your IP address is you do the actions that you were trying to do from a different part of the internet, which might mean you are going to connect to a VPN so that all of your requests are going to go to this VPN and then to who you're talking to, who you're trying to attack. So the attacker thinks that that is coming from the location of the VPN rather than your house. So that is how you quote-unquote change your IP address.
Yeah, so to iterate for people on the stream, if they couldn't hear, basically the question was to how do you change your IP address if it gets blocked? The easy answer is you can't really change it on the ISP layer unless you wait for it to get cycled, because most IP addresses on your network are dynamic. You don't really have a static IP address. You don't own an IP address unless you're a business. It is to use something like proxying or VPNing to get your IP address to look like something else, and by tunneling through some other machine to get to that machine. It's again of this whole concept of making your traffic go to other places before you hit the real machine so that you aren't seen. That's how you be anonymous for all you hackers out there. So
recommend using a VPN for attacking things, because people who post things don't like it when you attack other people.
Yeah.
If their IP's blocked.
It's just in general, if you're not allowed to attack something, don't attack it. Like, it's a really easy concept to forget, but just, if you're not supposed to be attacking something and you're asking the question, am I going to get caught? Yes, you will. So, for instance, a lot of great hackers have been caught. So, it's really hard to not get caught. And so, continuing on with does anyone else have any questions before I continue? No? Okay. So continuing on, I have this hash. I can use pass the hash, which allows me to, instead of cracking this hash necessarily, I can just copy it and send it over to the machine that I want to break into. Or send it over to a machine that I want to break into. So I'm going to background this really quickly. And I'm going to use another Metasploit module. Again, all of these things can be used outside of Metasploit. I'm just using the module so that if you want to learn or practice this, you can easily install Kali, load up Metasploit, and test these out. So if I want to use post, which means post exploitation, multi, manage, and then auto route. And then I can check my sessions, session number 1. So all I need to do is set session 1 and run. And what this just did is it said the route has been added from this route to this route, or has been routed from either of these subnets from the session 1, so that I can pivot and set all of my traffic through session 1. And when I mean all of my traffic, I mean all of my Metasploit traffic. If you if you have a route added and you're trying to exploit something outside and this box can't talk outside, you will have a problem because you're routing your traffic through this box before it goes anywhere else. So keep that in mind. Yeah.
Does that create like an actual interface on that computer, or is it?
So the way it works is the meterpreter shell, or the meterpreter session that it has, it sends all of your traffic through that from the shell that you create, or the Meterpreter payload that it has. So it's the Meterpreter protocol that it's sending it through. You could do this with using a proxy. So there's a thing, you could use SOX4A proxy, which you could set up with proxy chains, which you would have to set up a proxy server on the other machine. I'll show you right now that there is a module for that. So if you use auxiliary server SOX4A options, we can see that there is a SOX4A module, and the IP address is supposed to be your local host, so 0.0.0 is fine, and then the port is whatever port you want to open the server up on the client machine, and you will connect to it using proxy chains. For the purposes of this, I won't really use it because I don't need it for now, but this is what you would want to use if you wanted to set up a proxy and then use proxy chain, or use something outside of Metasploit to break in so that you can use proxy chains. Yeah.
So that would let you continue to have access to being able to run things on each of the machines that you've gone into. Like if one of them has access to the internet and one of them doesn't, that you could still have access to both.
You would, so using the SOX4A proxy, you would be sending your traffic through this machine, and then being able to pivot inside of the network itself. You'd have to set up any session that you set up and any route that you added. Once you create a SOX4 proxy, it'll create a proxy on all of the routes that you created. So that could be one machine, or that could be several different machines. And so that is kind of what the purpose of it is to set up a proxying tunnel through it. Does that make sense? Cool. Does anyone else have any questions? Like, that was a great question. No? Okay, I will continue. So now that I have this, I want to I don't know what else is on the network. So let me check real quick, and let me do a port scan. Again, I don't memorize. I said this whenever I was doing the life hacking session. I don't memorize everything in a tool. I just know how to find out where I need to find out the information I need to use a tool. So it's not necessarily beneficial to memorize everything a tool has to offer, but rather understand how the tool works and be able to search and find out the information to use the tool. So once I search this, I can see that I want to do a scan real quick. So I'm going to use, and I'm going to set my IP address to be the other IP. Now, I've set up this other client box. This other box only has, can everyone see that? No? Okay. Well, all you need to know about this box is that it's on the network. Here, I'll increase the size. Can you see that? Cool. Is that good, Jake? Cool. So this machine does not have access to the .57 network. It has access to the .56 network. And I want to scan this machine because I don't want to scan the entire network right now. For the entire virtual network that I have set up, that would take a very long time. I'm just going to scan this individual box to demonstrate that I have now been able to route my traffic because I was not able to reach this subnet before. So if I set the R host to 192.168.56.102, set the R port, set the ports, because I don't want to scan all the ports, that's going to take forever, to just 445, and then I run. I should be able to scan, oh, did that not work? Oh, maybe a TCP scan would work. So I'm going to set this up again, 192.168.56.102. Set our port, set ports to 445, run. Yeah, so if you look, I can see that I have scanned 192.168.56, and that the TCP port 445 is open. So before, I wasn't able to access this network, and now I have access to the internal network that is .56. That is the end of my demo. Sorry if it was not as exciting as I thought it would be, but that is it. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? No? Yeah?
So for like, when you're looking at a target and you see that they're running some version of some web server, how do you get from like knowing that it's there and like looking up CVEs for that version to like an actual exploit you could use?
So, yeah, you Google a lot. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think whenever I was helping, whenever I was interning, basically, and doing Hack the Box even, whenever I just found a service, I would just Google the name of the service, the version, and exploit, and it would pop up. And if there was known, I would try to see if there was anything I could exploit. And so, there are a lot of great websites that kind of do this. Exploit.db has a ton of exploits that you can search through. And then there is like a couple of new ones that popped up. Nick, what's a new one?
Vulners isn't that new, but I mean that's more on-box stuff.
Oh, okay.
Callie has a command called searchsploit, which searches exploits.
Yeah, so searchsploit's another one that you can do. It's an offline database of all of the like CVEs. A lot of the things in searchsploit are modules in Metasploit. So therefore, if something is in searchsploit, you could just search in Metasploit, use the module, and run it. Other than that, it's kind of just like a game of recon at that point, seeing how much information you can find about the service.
Yeah, Vulmon came out recently. VULMON.
Yeah, so that's like another vulnerability searching tool.
And sometimes exploiting doesn't even actually involve trying to break the service. It could just be involving like just misconfiguration or just bad management, trying to just get around that.
Yeah, so once you have a web server, you want to, I mean, this is going to, again, be going into more of the web talk that Nick or Jake, whoever takes up the talk, is going to give. But you're going to want to do a ton of different things like Derby, Nikdo, kind of find as much information, find any admin portals, try to log into places, that kind of stuff. Does that answer your question? Cool. Anyone else have any questions? No? Okay, well, that's it. I hope to see you guys at DHA next week, because I'm going, hopefully. DHA is in a karaoke bar in, I don't know actually, what's the address? It's like in between, it's near Midtown Dallas, I guess you could say. DHA.
Top 35. The 35P. Koreatown.